Above me rests 25,000 tons of German steel. The SMS Kronprinz Wilhelm, a dreadnought battleship that once contested the rule of the North Sea. On the 21st of June 1919, her crew opened the seacocks and sent her to the bottom. She wasn't alone. 54 warships of the German High Seas Fleet scuttled themselves in one day. The greatest act of maritime defiance in history. Today, 7 of them remain on the seabed. I've dived them all, and I'm going to show you exactly how you can do it too. I'm here in Scapa Flow, Orkney, 10 miles off the north-east coast of Scotland. This isn't just another dive trip. For avid wreck divers, this is the pilgrimage, the wreck diving equivalent of Mecca. After World War I ended, 74 ships of the Imperial German Navy were interned here while the Allies decided their fate at Versailles. The Germans, however, had other plans. At 11:20 a.m. on Midsummer's Day 1919, Admiral Ludwig von Reuter gave the order. Within hours, the fleet was gone, 52 ships on the bottom. The Royal Navy managed to save 22, but simply weren't quick enough to get them all. Of the 52 that were scuttled, most were salvaged in the 1920s and 30s, but 7 major warships remain, 3 battleships and 4 light cruisers, sitting in depths between 18 and 45 metres. These are great depths for diving, which is one of the reasons that Scapa is so popular. In this video, I'm going to give you the lowdown on what it's like to dive there, a few tips and tricks, and what to look out for on the wrecks. So, without any further ado, let's dive in. Of the 7 diveable wrecks, 3 are battleships. The SMS König, SMS Markgraf and SMS Kronprinz Wilhelm. These are the crown jewels of Scapa Flow. All 3 are dreadnought-class battleships, 25,000 tons each, 175 metres long, armed with 305mm guns. They all fought at Jutland in 1916 and all sit between 38 and 45 metres deep. And all 3 are completely inverted, upside down on the seabed. When you first drop onto one of these wrecks, the scale is overwhelming. You're looking at a curved wall of steel that disappears into the darkness in both directions. It takes your brain a moment to process what you're seeing. This isn't a wreck, it's a steel cathedral. Each battleship carried 5 main gun turrets, twin 305mm guns, capable of hurling shells over 20 kilometres. Because they're inverted, the turrets are underneath, but on Kronprinz Wilhelm you can actually get beneath the hull and see them. Massive gun barrels, still pointing downward into the sand. There's actually also an 8th ship in Scapa Flow, another battleship, the even larger SMS Bayern. Most of her, though, was salvaged in the 1930s, but when they raised the hull, the main gun turrets fell out. Now they sit inverted on the seabed at 36 metres. 4 massive turrets, each weighing over 600 tons, lying like discarded relics from another age. You can dive the Bayern turrets as a separate site. Swimming round these isolated pieces of a battleship is surreal. They're monuments to both the engineering of 1916 and the salvage operations of the 1930s. Back to the 3 intact battleships. The sterns are where most divers start. Massive propeller shafts. The props themselves were salvaged, but the shafts and large chunks of engine components remain. Rudders the size of buses. Every surface is covered in plumos and enemies, white feathery creatures that make the steel look almost organic. If you're interested in penetration, then there is absolutely tons to do on these wrecks. Of course, everything is inverted, hatches in the ceiling, decks above you, inside you find corridors, compartments, machinery, all inverted, collapsed after the impact of 100 years of corrosion and degradation. Getting underneath the Kronprinz to see those gun turrets is one of the most incredible moments of diving Scapa Flow. These are the weapons that fought at Jutland, now frozen in place, pointing at nothing but sand and darkness. Of course, these are deep wrecks and bottom time is limited. At about 43 metres on the Markgraf, you're not going to be down there very long before your deco racks up. The good news is, it's easy to multi-level them and you can come up and spend time on the top of the hull. There's such a huge amount to see though, that you won't get it all in one dive, so you're going to have to come back and do it again, and that's one of the reasons people come to Scapa Flow over and over again. Nothing else in the world compares to diving a battleship that fought at Jutland. The 4 light cruisers are a very different experience. SMS Brummer, Cöln, Karlsruhe and Dresden. They're much smaller, about 5,000 tonnes, 150 metres long, and crucially, they're more accessible. All of the light cruisers have been salvaged to a greater or lesser extent. What that means is the engine areas are normally a bit of a mess, but that offers the opportunity to see plenty of things that you might not be able to otherwise. They all also have their own individual characteristics. Karlsruhe is the shallowest, maximum depth 27 metres, with the port side at just 14. Brummer and Cöln both sit at 36 metres max, but lying on their sides, the top of the hull comes up to 22 to 25 metres. Dresden is deeper, 38 metres at the stern, 27 at the bow, with the shallowest point at 17 metres. What makes these cruisers special is what has survived. Brummer still has this incredible brass anti-magnetic bridge, and lying just off to the side in the seabed, an incredible searchlight iris that allowed the Germans to turn them on off at an instant, and that performed so well at Jutland. Dresden and Cöln are still relatively intact, even though Karlsruhe was heavily salvaged with explosives. What that means is that you can see so much of the internal machinery exposed, and as time starts to take its toll on each of the cruisers and the decks start to peel away, there's more and more to see. Each of them is fascinating in its own right, and each of them rewards closer inspection. The great news is, because they're relatively shallow, you're going to have plenty of time to do that. And if you're planning a week in Scapa Flow, you'll get to dive all 4, and possibly some of them more than once. So, you've liked the idea of that? How do you get there? Well, Scapa Flow is in Orkney in Scotland, which is pretty much as far north as you can get. There's basically several ways of getting there. You can either fly to Kirkwall on the island or take a ferry from mainland Scotland, which is what most people do. The dive operators are all based in Stromness, which is where the ferry unloads. So it's quite a popular option is for people to put their gear into special containers that then go on the ferry, and you can then manhandle it off the other side. Optionally, you can take a vehicle, and there's plenty of parking in Stromness. In terms of accommodation, 2 main options. Most of the operators have liveaboard boats where you can actually sleep on board the boat. They'll come back into Stromness every night. Other operators offer shore-based accommodation. Either way, every day you're going to be back on land for the evening. Stromness isn't a massive place and doesn't have a whole load of facilities, but it does have pubs and shops, and perhaps crucially, a dive shop where you can either buy equipment or get stuff fixed. They particularly specialise in turning dry suits around really quickly, a facility that lots and lots of people have used over the years. So when's the best time to go? Well, people have their individual preferences. Some people like the summer because obviously the weather is nicer, the days are longer. If you go later in the year, visibility can tend to be better, but then you obviously have to contend with the cold and the weather. But hey, that's diving. So what will a typical day at Scapa look like? Well, normally you'll have had your gas and everything done the day before. So you get on the boat, or you may be on the boat already. You finish last minute preparations. You may have breakfast on the boat if that's what your boat does. You then head out. As you get close to the site, the skipper will normally deliver a briefing, and all the skippers, this is what they do. They know these wrecks inside and out. So you'll understand where you're going to go down, what you're going to see, and where they prefer you to come back up. And each boat's got its own individual procedures. They'll also let you know any specific hazards. On site, you'll get kitted up and get in the water in your buddy teams. The wrecks are normally all shotted, so descend down the line, do your dive. At the end of the dive, you can either come back to the shots or you can stick up a delayed SMB. Really important that wherever you are in Scapa that your ascent is marked. Some skippers prefer you to come up shot lines, some insist on you doing a DSMB ascent, but your skipper will let you know what that is. You get back on the boat. Normally there'll be some sort of lunch, you get re-gassed, you get your cylinders filled if that's required, and then you'll have another briefing, and normally a couple of hours after you've come out from the first dive, you'll go back and do the second dive, and that will be on normally a much shallower wreck. Once that's complete, you'll then head back in, and on the way back in, obviously there's the opportunity to sort out gear, start getting things filled, and then that's the end of the diving day, and the evening is yours. That gives you plenty of opportunity to have a look at any videos you've taken, sort out photographs, chat with the other divers, fill in dive logs, and of course, get something to eat and have a drink if that's your thing. What I would say is multiple days, repetitive days of that diving, you find you've done some absolutely incredible dives, some of the most memorable dives of your life, but you'll also be really exhausted. This is physically and mentally demanding diving in some pretty challenging conditions. So that's Scapa Flow, 7 scuttled warships from the Imperial German High Seas Fleet, resting between 25 and 43 metres deep in the cold, sometimes clear waters of Orkney. 3 battleships, König, Kronprinz Wilhelm and Markgraf, massive, deep, technical dives that demand respect and experience. The 4 light cruisers, Cöln, Karlsruhe, Brummer and Dresden, more accessible but still incredibly detailed and perfect for building your wreck diving skills and spending the time to really appreciate them as individual wrecks. If this is your first trip to Scapa, a really important piece of advice is don't try to do everything in 1 week. Most of the operators are only going to give you 2 dives a day, and that's 10 to 12 dives across 5 days. You'll dive each wreck once, maybe twice if the conditions allow you. The battleships are obviously the most challenging, but the cruisers are the most surprising, and don't dismiss them. There's also a whole load of other dives that I've not talked about on this video, and you may end up doing some of those as well. But what I can guarantee you is by the end of the week, you'll understand why divers come back here year after year. And I know people who've been here 20 odd times. And the reason is because this isn't normal wreck diving. These ships were scuttled by their own crews in a final act of defiance after Germany's defeat in World War I. It's incredible to think that within hours 52 warships went to the bottom, and although most were salvaged, these 7 remain as historical monuments to that incredible moment in history. A century later, they've become artificial reefs. The steel is slowly returning to the sea, covered in marine life. But the shapes are still recognisable. Gun turrets, propeller shafts, massive armour plating. You're not just looking at metal, you're looking at history. So, if you're planning your first Scapa Flow trip, here's my advice. Number 1, get your dry suit course if you haven't already got one. This is cold and demanding. Make sure that you're capable of diving to the depths of these wrecks. They're ideal for rebreathers, but if you're open circuit, there's still a ton to do. Top advice, make sure you've got some sort of nitrox qualification. If you've got the ability to accelerate your decompression, even better. Don't forget your video or underwater camera, because you're going to want to record this so that you can look back on it in the future. Because this is bucket list diving. It's challenging, it's historical, and it's absolutely worth it. If you've enjoyed this video, look out for the ones on the individual wrecks that are coming up. Please, of course, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Deep Wreck Diver, and I'll see you on the next dive.